Kind of a dumb question, but development environments. What do you guys use for development, and what do you prefer?
Yeah, because everybody has their own quirks. I use phpBB, which is just a text editor. It has syntax highlighting, and that's it. There's no auto-completion. There's no anything that you can get in Visual Studio. Visual Studio irks me because it feels slow to me. But so yeah, for me, it's just a text editor with syntax highlighting. Obviously, it's a Windows, it's a WAMP setup: Windows, Apache, MySQL, PHP, and that's the basics. Obviously, Git, got to work with that. Will, for styling?
Yeah, well, yeah, I was on the style team for a while, then didn't have the time for styling, but I still wanted to contribute, so I moved to the moderator team. But I also build websites and stuff, and I love Notepad++, Sam, yes. And I have my own local installation of Ubuntu to test everything that I do before I upload. But I love just Notepad++, and I use books for reference. So,
Stefan, do you want to ask the question publicly? Just type in the chat. Right. Or are we cutting you off?
You are.
Go ahead.
Unless you don't care about the rest of that. Either Ubuntu or Windows, both interchangeably. Well, not interchangeably, but at the same time, I guess you could say. Both of which are broken on that particular laptop that I have with me. Notepad++ as well. It also is very simple. There's only syntax highlighting. Auto-completion, there's no auto-completion. It does tabs, though, which is really useful. That's, yep.
For support, of course, I have a local installation of XAMPP for the current version of phpBB. I'm not a PHP coder, but I do use Aranea, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, as a text editor, and I use Crimson Editor to answer questions like, in what file can I find this? Because even though I don't understand the code very well, I can use Crimson Editor to search across a variety of files and usually pinpoint at least the area of interest. And sometimes, by analogy, I can figure it out. I mean, I'm learning a little bit of it slowly. And then I use phpMyAdmin to teach myself MySQL by clicking on the little buttons and then looking at the query that's produced and then thinking about, how I might alter that.
Well, for the most part, I use Notepad++. I see someone there mention Visual Studio 2010. So I've actually used Visual Studio 2010 with some PHP.NET, PHP, I forgot what it's called. What is it? Yeah, that one, vs.php, which is just a plugin for Visual Studio 2010. Allows you to debug and actually integrates nicely with the IntelliSense and all that stuff. So it's pretty nice every now and then to use if I'm really deep into the code.
For styles validation, I use always WinMerge, Notepad, and for images, Photoshop. That's everything, and a local dashboard I use.
Stefan. Right. So I asked this via RC as well. I guess this is mainly for developers, but also maybe for the mod team. How do you think going PHP 5.3 only will affect phpBB? Will it mean that it will help the adoption of PHP 5.3 as soon as phpBB 4 comes out, or do you think that it will actually stop people from moving to phpBB 4?
This one's interesting. You may have seen my blog post about this. I linked it from Marco Tabini's blog. I tend to think that the PHP developers have to move ahead, and that the application support has to pull along the users. So yes, I think that moving to PHP 5.3 whenever phpBB does it, it will be a great help to the adoption of PHP 5.3. Not that there's anything wrong with using phpB now on PHP 5.3. Man, I'm saying that word too much. But just when web hosts and server administrators see that, explicitly that, support for PHP 5.3 in WordPress and Drupal and phpBB and every other major software that's used on web hosts, yes, that will help a lot. Anybody have anything else to add? All right.
Yeah, I just wanted to observe that really, I think the average end user of phpBB is totally unaware and uncaring of what version of PHP their host is running. So really, I see the pinch point as being hosting providers and what they do in terms of updating the PHP that they're running.
My question is about support for commercial users. Obviously, there's a great community around free users, basically. And we get a lot of feedback from them and lots of users and lots of support. But obviously with competition from other bulletin boards, specifically commercial ones like vBulletin, and that warm fuzzy feeling that businesses get when they pay for something, what's the strategy in the future regarding that?
Well, let me say, we were having a conversation about this yesterday, and I forget with whom, and I had made the observation that I thought phpBB needed to do a better job going forward of marketing the product to commercial and business users, because I've done a few sites and it's a tremendous business tool, and the people I've done it for have really loved it. I did a site for someone who has a sales company of cutting tools. They have outside salesmen, they have customers, and we set up a board with individual forums for each customer, so from the customer's point of view, it looked like they had their own forum devoted to their support and their product questions, and the outside salespeople could contact the home office and get drawings and specs and files.
Yuriy, Rusko imposter. Should I kick him, Yuriy? Oh, you have it. Okay, thank you. Go on.
Well, okay. So I mean, if anyone really wants to pay someone, they're welcome to pay me, right? Or and there are plenty of people on the site who offer private services. We have considered in the past doing a support, kind of an official support for businesses and so on, the way that WordPress does it for whatever hundreds of thousands of dollars that they want for people. I can't imagine anyone actually wanting to do that, but then I also see that I think a couple people already have, a couple organizations are paying WordPress developers hundreds of thousands of dollars, and as I said, I mean, I could use $100,000 as much as anyone, so it's really the logistics of it. Being that it is an open source project, we have to consider things like who would get that money, whether it would be the project, and whether if there was specifically one or two people who would be providing the majority of that assistance and then getting paid $100,000 for it, whether that would be then divided amongst the rest of the team members who are also doing things in the project, or whether it would just go to those particular people, and then how it would get divided up, and why someone would want to do that as opposed to posting in the community. So there are all sorts of logistics problems, which if we could figure out, then we could certainly do that. But that's... Is that the goal? Yes. The goal is to appeal to just about anyone we can appeal to, and so there's an obvious hole there that businesses are not able to receive support directly from. There's no official page that they could go to and directly get assistance there. So yeah, I think the goal is there, and then we'd love to do it, but again, I welcome suggestions how that could be implemented without changing the nature of our community, without making some kind of issue between different team members and someone who gets paid as opposed to someone who doesn't get paid. This actually goes to the development team, who we considered hiring developers to speed up development at one point, and it was the same exact problem, how that would affect the dynamics of the community itself.
I think maybe that in a sense you need to first expand your commercial user base before you worry about who's going to get paid what for doing what kind of support, although, of course, that's, you know, that's a concern. What I would like to see, and I guess, having said that, that means I probably better do it myself, is perhaps in the blog, a section devoted to explaining some of the commercial uses and how a business could effectively use phpBB, because I've talked to a lot of business people, and when I attempt to explain what a bulletin board is, they invariably confuse it with chat and say, well, you know, that's just for teenage girls. Not IRC, of course, included in that. So I would like to see some documentation or some example on our website, hopefully with a demo site that they can look at to try to advance the commercial use of the software.
Yeah, well, I mean, if we tomorrow made an announcement saying we're offering corporate services for phpBB for, you know, whatever obscene amount of money, let's divide WordPresses, you know, by 2 and say $50,000 per year. I'm sure we would, yeah, I'm sure we could get you know, 5-10 people signed up by the end of the month. There's really not a doubt in my mind. But again, but then what, right? So kind of we would have to really plan that out ahead of time and figure out who would be handling that and how we would be handling that before we even, you know, did that. Because then as soon as you're getting paid, there's a contract and there's some assumptions about the quality of service you're going to get, and then you know, all sorts of things. If something was to break, on what level, how large the board is. With WordPress, you don't really have that much of a problem with that, whereas with PHPB, the boards can go anywhere from, you know, a couple million posts to Gaia, which is, I think, what is it, like 15 billion or something like that. So, yeah.
Not to spend too much time on this one issue, but it's kind of a pet issue of mine. It's something I've thought about for a long time. As you mentioned the fact that business users feel better about a paid-for product than they do about a free product, but a lot of that, I think, is a matter of education, because I think there are a lot of people that make business decisions that are not in the IT area that don't realize, for example, that they're running Linux or Apache or any one of a number of other open source pieces of software. When I have done this, and I haven't done very many of them, I don't even talk about the cost of the software. I say, okay, here is, you know, say a flat rate for your turnkey package, you know, and that includes everything. And they don't ask, you know, what is the software component in that. So.